Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Season 3 premiere of This Week in the AFL. Alongside my co-host, Erik Watkins, I'm Stephen R. Erik, it's been a while since I've talked to you. What you been up to?
Oh, just the usual shenanigans, conundrums, borderline insanity. Typical day in the life.
Erik's conundrums are always a funny story to hear. But we are glad to be back here on This Week. I'm glad to be back here on This Week in the AFL. This is our third year inside the arena.org. Third year doing this show. A lot of exciting stuff. But it almost didn't happen because all this offseason, the big issue has been with the collective bargaining agreement. Would they play a season? When would they play a season? All these questions have finally been answered. There is a CBA. There is a season. But I know, Erik, you have a little more you want to say about all this.
Now, I was watching through the lens of the Twitterverse with Ivan Soto, head of the Players Union, with the Commissioner's Office, which big news in of itself on why they were a little bit quiet about going public. And I noticed that even with the past few years of this league being very, very tenuous and everybody walking on a tightrope, there was, I don't want to say nastiness, but a very heightened intensity to these negotiations. You had tweets about the league may be done. Soto putting his tweets out from the Players Union, what they're trying to do, bargaining in good faith. A couple of tweets from the league. In the 11th hour, those last few weeks leading up to the big announcement where the CBA was signed, it got ugly. Jeff Bushey, owner of the Sharks, formerly the AFL, now in the NAL, he was levying some intense accusations about some of the teams, Washington, Albany, and kind of dipping their hand into the cookie jar. Then that led to arguments with Soto, and it got very, very rough. And for a while, I myself was wondering, would this season even be worth it? Now that there's a 4-year CBA in place, I hope with the new commissioner, there's a lot that can be ironed out, so the league can at the very least stabilize, potentially grow, and see out this 4-year deal.
Yes, having a 4-year deal instead of I remember last year, they had a 1-year contract deal, have one season. Now it's 4. So we don't have to worry about the end of the year. Okay, what's next? We don't have to worry about that anymore because we know what's going to happen over the next 4 years. Everybody seems to love the fact that Scott Butera is no longer the commissioner of the league. I understand why. But I'm very excited to see what Randall Bowe can bring in. I don't know if you know much about Randall Bowe. I've never really heard of the guy. I know he worked within the league before. But I'm excited for what he can bring to the table.
I'm cautiously optimistic. He was a fairly high level in the league's front office. Not quite a Butera protege, but I have heard some things along those lines. And with everything Kurz did since he basically brought the league back from the depths, and then everything Butera did when Kurz was pretty much forced out by the public, Bowe has got not just big shoes to fill, but he doesn't have a whole lot of time to try to cement his own reputation because of the state of the league and what he's really coming into. He's got a terrible situation that he's inheriting, and I just hope he can get cooler heads to prevail and say, okay, this is what didn't work, this is what did, this is what past commissioners have done, this is what can work, let's get a concrete plan.
One thing I'm looking forward to, and I was hoping to have Randall Bowe on with us tonight, but he's never got back to us with it, but it's okay. Expansion. I know it's a long shot. We want to get through the season and then worry about expansion, but I'm hearing a lot of different things. I know you probably have too. West Coast League, maybe the AFL gets in on that. Perhaps the cities, and we wrote articles about this during the offseason. Chicago, St. Louis,
Mm-hmm.
different cities. That's the one thing I'm looking forward to when it comes to Mr. Bo. Expansion. I would love to see more teams come next season.
I would also love to see more teams next season. However, I want to see how this season would work first. And rather than going to a bigger league with isolated teams, like how we had last year with Tampa Bay, like how the situation was with Arizona, aside from a couple of teams out west, treat this like you would, say, a lower level soccer league. Have it as an amalgamation of leagues, which would become conferences, and have all of the play in conference, and then have teams travel farther across the country for sort of a national playoff. I think if that model were investigated, the league would work a lot better long term. Plus, if you have, say, some of the other competing leagues struggling a bit, you can work out a deal to bring those into the fold somehow.
I love that idea. National playoff. That just sounds very intriguing. Wow, that would be real something. I would love to see that as well. But looking forward to this season now. The CBA is done. We have 4 years of more Arena Football League, which is awesome. The big thing here is something different this year. The playoff format. There will be 2 playoff games per round. 2 teams will host, and then the other 2 teams will host the weekend after. I personally feel like this brings more excitement because let's say the home team wins the first game, and then the road team wins the home team wins the second game at the other race at the other arena. The winner advances to Arena Bowl 31. It depends on points, and I feel like that makes it a lot more exciting for the fans. But I've been told today that some people are just not excited about it. I don't know how are you excited about it, Eric?
I'm a little bit excited, and I'm curious to see how it would work with arena football. This is not by any means a unique idea. For all of those soccer fans, if you ever look at, say, for example, our MLS playoffs started to do it, or the UEFA Champions League with the 2-leg aggregate, it's basically the same thing. In the Canadian Football League, they did that going as far back as the 60s, and they even had a tiebreaker just 2 years ago come down to this similar fashion, the last 2 games of the regular season. So I like the fact that on top of the league pass with how the teams are structured, the AFL is venturing out and trying something new. So it's not familiar to the diehards, but if you're a sports fan overall, you should love it. It's going to bring a lot more action, and more importantly, even if one of those games happens to be a blowout, keep an eye on the strategy in the fourth quarter because every single point will matter.
Like Eric said, this is sort of like a soccer thing. The soccer playoffs are sort of like this as well. Have one team host and then the other team hosts, and then the winner is based on like some. I don't understand soccer, but I know it's called aggregate. It's sort of that deal.
Yeah, the total number of goals in 2 games. In this case, the total number of points in 2 games.
If you want to hear more of Eric's soccer analysis, check out the Soccer to the Max with him, Rachel McCrieger, and Sean Garner every couple days?
You know, we usually try to have a midweek edition around Wednesday and a regular edition on Sundays.
There you go. Soccer to the Max every Wednesday and Sunday. W2mnet.com. Go check it out. It's real awesome. Tim Capper of ArenaFan, who's the first to talk to new Commissioner Randall Bowe, will join us momentarily. Wow, those guys are lucky to get that. But anyway, before we get to Tim, we have breaking news. Former Jacksonville Sharks, and don't worry, I know he's a veteran pretty much. He played more with the Sharks. That's where he's well known as. Quarterback Tommy Grady will join the Albany Empire. Wow. You know, they were the Albany was the odd team out when it came to quarterbacks before this because Washington had Nick DeVilla and Warren Smith Jr. Brigade had gotten Randy Hippert and the soul of Dan Radaball. Now we have a league full of talented quarterbacks with Tom Brady coming in.
This is a huge move for Albany. They needed a big splash signing, and I really think they got it. With Grady, championship caliber quarterback, a lot of experience getting the Sharks to an Arena Bowl, played outstanding when he was with Utah. This is a guy, if you're looking for familiarity, if you're looking for someone with a good arm, this is what Albany needs for their first quarterback. A big move, and I will say, I wasn't entirely surprised that after Jacksonville switched leagues, he stayed. I'm equally not as surprised now with Albany come calling, even with the situation with Washington last year. This was pretty much expected, and it's a good move for Albany to close the deal.
This is big for Albany. And for all those saying, like, oh, the Arena Football League has 4 teams, it's a joke. Take this into consideration. Via ArenaFan, Grady, Radaball, Hippard, and Davila have combined 2,500 touchdown passes in their careers. Combined. That's no joke.
No, everybody looks at 4 teams. Listen, the Arena Football League was a 4-team league back in 87. I think we can all agree you're getting much more talent in a much more open league this year as compared to years ago.
Yeah, definitely not a joke at all. I understand why people keep saying it. But now joining us here on This Week in the AFL Season 3 premiere is the man behind ArenaFan. Try to rhyme there. Mr. Tim Capper. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, fellas. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I want to get your ideas, so we'll start with this. How did you feel like the whole offseason? We're worried about the CBA after it expired on September 30th. How did you feel? Were you worried at all? Like, oh, maybe the season might not happen or something?
Well, yeah. And I say that even though, I've been following the league for a long time. I've been through many labor disputes. I've been through 2 shutdowns. I've been through yes. I was like everybody else. I had put out my thank yous and stuff like that on social media. So I was very concerned, but I was also I had a feeling it was going to happen like everybody else did. So I hadn't heard anything else otherwise.
And now with the CBA being signed, that's the first big hurdle. Not quite the only hurdle, but the big one. Do you feel like with all the tension leading into the negotiations with the CBA, is it a sigh of the relief? Is it an immediate focus on what's next? I mean, now going into an actual season, where do you think the league is after this? We see everything and, with Evan Soto doing his stuff that he was doing on social media, basically, was he negotiating over social media? Some people would say that he was. I think it was signed. They got what they wanted, so to speak. I mean, it's pretty good. I think it's just a matter of where the league can go. I don't think everything, yes, is going to start anew, so to speak, because we have 3 years plus another year, which is a sort of like an extension year, so to speak. So the grand total of 4 years of labor peace. We need to grow. The league needs to grow. And let's hope that the amounts that were agreed upon will not hinder the league in any way. The money's coming in. Ted Leonsis doesn't say I'm done. Jaws doesn't say I'm done. The league needs to grow. There's been a lot of bad stuff with the Arena League over the past 2 years. It just needs to grow. We need to get away from it all. And like Leonsis had said in many of his TED Talks, blogs, we need to go forward, expand, and
make this league the best indoor football league that that North America has.
Now, I have two questions here, both pertaining to commissioners. The first one, I'll start with Scott Pitera being out as the commissioner of the AFL. A lot of people have been saying, oh, this is a blessing in disguise because Pitera's ruined so much. Do you feel like Pitera is really that bad?
No. And I would not have put, in all honesty, if the league had folded, and I've said this openly, so this is not something new. I said, if the league had folded, I was not putting any blame on the front office. I was not putting any blame on the owners. So he did what he needed to do. I think he actually did move the league along where it needed to go. He fixed he was able to look at the books, correct what was necessary, and people will look at him as like, oh well, he was the commissioner that X, Y, Z, and all these teams may have folded and stuff like that. But I still think that we're better off having had him as a commissioner these past 3+ years.
So Randall Bowe is now the new commissioner of the AFL. I don't know much about him. I know he works within the league. I'm pretty sure Erik has said in our group chat he didn't know much about him either. Could you tell us a little bit about what Bowe has done as part, like a league executive or whatever title he had held?
Well, actually, he's never been held at he's never held a job within the league itself. He's been specifically with Monumental Sports Entertainment.
Oh, okay.
He is there, and this is where it make it interesting to how you guys, and I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. He is the executive VP and the general counsel for MSC. So take with it whatever you feel. I mean, but he's been a part of the negotiations for the Valor. He's been a part of the OTT stuff. If you check if you go check out his profile over at Monumental Sports Entertainment on their website, it's very interesting what he does. Same thing if you go over to his LinkedIn account. It's very interesting what you can learn about him. So it sounds like he knows Ted very, very well.
Now, this little bit of a big semi-bombshell with this. Since he's been like this involved really from one side, can he kind of not just work with Ted, who owns two of the most recent up until Albany expansion teams, but can he kind of work with everybody and know when to take a step back so that way he can evaluate the best plans for the league going forward?
Well, from what I've understood, when I did the interview with him last week, and it is available, in multiple places if anybody happened to miss it. He says that he is centering specifically on the Arena Football League. So, I mean, we have to take him at his word. It sounds that he has the best intentions for the league. He wants to grow the league. He wants to grow the technology for the league. So, as I said, I mean, it's early on. It's completely different than what Scott Pitera was. Scott Pitera came from the gambling side of things. This is the guy who's been an executive VP for AOL at one point, by the way. So it's too early to say, but from everything that I heard from him during the interview, he seems to be centered specifically on the AFL.
Yeah, we were talking before you came on about how the one thing I was most excited to see was expansion. But of course, that's not going to happen in 2018. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. We'll have to see what happens. But focusing on this year, exactly. There's something we haven't seen. I don't remember seeing in the years I've watched Arena football. There's a new playoff system, and I told Erik, and he agreed with me. It's kind of exciting to see how this will play out. How do you feel about the new playoff system?
It's very different. And I know a lot of people have been poo-pooing and saying, oh, man, it's too much like European soccer, et cetera, et cetera. Very similar to what the CFL did back in '86 for a single season, and then before that, the CFL had done it for many years, where they would have a 2-game system, a total point system. I'm intrigued. I actually am intrigued about it. I was on the fence for a while, but then after I thought about it, I said, even if it is just a 1-year thing, it will give more exposure. Sure, you'll see the same teams twice, but yet you also get a guaranteed home playoff game. But my thought was this, and I think the best scenario, because we, as all three of us know, almost anything can happen in the Arena Football League.
Absolutely.
And my hope is that come game 2 of whichever series is going to be, at the end of game 2, each team will have one game. The score will be tied.
Yes.
We will head to a sudden death overtime.
Yes.
Could you think about this, guys? In essence, you could have 2 overtimes back to back. If the game is tied, they go into overtime. And then if they're at a point that they're tied again at the end of overtime, they go into another overtime to decide the series.
It would be insane, but at the same time, it would be beautiful. And I hope CBS Sports Network, whatever, I hope they get one, if not both of those games. For everything this year, that would be just an extremely fitting lead up to Arena Bowl 31.
Oh, no kidding. And, from what the league has shown today when they released the schedule for CBS Sports Network, at the moment, all games during the playoffs are currently scheduled for CBS Sports Network, including the Arena Bowl and the games following up to Arena Bowl. So, let's hope. Let's hope. I mean, this could be, considering who, the team that's going to be assigned to the Arena Bowl, to the CBS Sports Network broadcast teams and stuff like that. It's going to be everybody will know what they need to know about the AFL. So much experience. It's going to be fun, guys. I'm actually really looking forward to this. 4 teams or not.
I feel the same way. I said quality over quantity in a group chat earlier, and people they gave me hell for it. I'm like, do you realize the players on these teams, like, these are the most talented players in the sport, and you're saying this is a joke? Like, I just don't get it. And speaking of quality, me and Erik will talk about this once we end the interview here, but I'm going to get your take on this. There are 4 teams, but all teams are loaded with talent. Is there one team that you see could be the out when it comes to making the title or winning the title?
The odd team out. Well, up until today, Albany seemed to be that way.
Right.
Until with them signing Tommy Grady. It's the teams are just so damn loaded.
Really.
The only thing that I could really think, to be honest with you, even though they're loaded, would be Washington, because I really think Coach Kokinos is the variable.
Wow.
Because if you look at how poorly they did last year, and I think if I'm not mistaken, their coaches are basically the same across the board, if I remember correctly. DC, I think DC may be the odd man out, considering even though they have Nick Davila behind center, he's the wild card. It's Baltimore is beyond improved. I mean, look what they've received so far. And if Joe Hills comes into the league,
oh boy,
if he decides to come into the league, anything can happen. So for right now, because on paper, all teams are stacked. But I think for me, the variable would be Coach Kokinos in DC, with them being the odd man out. I know it's strange to say, but hey, you know what? I would not be surprised if we had a team that the league is so evenly matched that nobody wins more than 10 games. Actually, no. 12 games this year. 12 games this year. Let me change that. I'll say if no team wins more than 8. I would not be surprised if it's going to be that much parity, but we'll see.
I really would have to agree with that. And that's why I think that the playoff system is going to come even more into play, because we may not know what those matchups are going to be until the end of week 12.
So we've lost Tim. I wanted to get his take on who he has for Arena Ball 31 champion. We'll have to get Tim's Arena Ball prediction another time. So Erik, we were talking. As I was telling Tim before we lost him. Thank you, Tim, by the way, for coming on. If we do get you back on, we'll have to ask you your thing. Odd team out. I was surprised by this. I didn't understand it. You said Baltimore was your odd team out.
I really think so. And while they've been getting gifts from the league, there's really two surprising moves that are unique to Baltimore that means there's something that could potentially be missing. Number one, even though, yes, they got Randy Hippert, fantastic quarterback, has shown what he can do. He can compete with the best of them. They lost a little bit of an edge to me when Shane Carden, out of nowhere, announced his retirement. I'm going into this season thinking, okay, with Warren Smith Jr. being in Washington, before the Davila signing, of course, the battles between Carden and Smith, two really dynamic dual-threat quarterbacks, were going to be tremendous. They were going to take the Beltway SmackDown to a whole new level.
That's very surprising. Tim is back with us now. Tim, I don't know if you heard, but Erik has Baltimore as the odd team out. I'm going to say mine after we ask Tim this last question here. Before we get cut off again.
Yeah.
Your matchup for Arena Ball 31 and who you have winning it all.
It's too. With all honesty, of all years, this is the toughest year to even pick. I mean, when you have of the four probable starters of these four teams having 27 years of experience, okay, 111,000 passing yards between them, and almost 2,500 career touchdowns. I might as well go and ask my 8-ball. But if I had to choose somebody, and I know it's that I would probably look at, I'd probably look at Baltimore, Philly. I don't know if Tommy came in too late with Albany. I'm looking at the wide receiver matchups. Even though I know, as I said, Washington is stacked at wide receiver too. Philly, Baltimore, I would not be surprised. I think Hippert could lead into the promised land after what happened last year. I think it would be pretty fitting to go up against Radabog again this year in the Arena Bowl.
I would like to see that as well. You and I have both met at Arena Bowl 30, and it was Radabog against Hippert. Yeah. Him going back to Philadelphia, looking for that redemption, would be such a story leading up to the big game. So between Philly and Baltimore, who do you see would raise the trophy at the end of the game?
But I'm going to correct you on something. Doesn't necessarily mean that the game's going to be in Philly. Remember, as I said, if this league is going to be as tight as it is, I mean, for all we know, the championship game could end up being back in Albany for the first time since 2000.
You're right.
Since 99. Anything can happen. But if I were to choose somebody, I think, you know what? I'd have to probably go with the defending champs, but it's just, again, it's way too close. Let's see what these final rosters are going to look like in 2 weeks.
You're right. You are right. This is just very early predictions.
Yeah, I understand we have to make a choice.
So Tim Capper picks if the Philadelphia Soul, by the way, if they do win Arena Bowl 31, they'll be the third team in league history to have a three-peat. The Detroit Drive did it from 1988 to 1990, and the Arizona Rattlers did it from 2012 to 2014. And, of course, we have to thank our fans at ArenaFan for giving us that information. Good stuff.
We aim to please.
Tim Capper, the man behind ArenaFan. I love that name. You were awesome once again, man. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we'll have to have you on again soon.
Hey, anytime, guys. It was my pleasure.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good stuff, Tim Capper. Always good. Love having him on. So now that
always a joy. Always a joy.
So now that you have given your odd team out, and I'm honestly so surprised by Tim's the Washington Valor. I don't think he knows. He might know. He might still think this. They signed Davila's favorite target, Rod Windsor. Yeah, look who's back. Back again. Windsor's back. Tell a friend. All right, we're done. But I guess I'm going to go out on a limb here. Another shocker that everyone's going to listen to is like, wow, what? And you're going to think I'm crazy for saying this. Listening to this podcast, Erik's sitting here with me thinking I'm crazy. The defending champions are the odd team out. I mean, that team.
Whoa. Wait a minute. Steven, if you need a mulligan, now is the time. You better explain yourself here.
Okay, so Tim did make a good point that Albany might be, it might be a little late having Grady come in. He's been technically out of the league for a year, and all this. He's come back from injury and all this. But the way the Soul played, not just last year, they played really bad football despite they winning all these games, losing only I think once or twice during the season. But there was such sloppy play so often from the Soul. I saw it. I was just like, yikes! What is going on? And now, Ryan, as of right now, as we record this, Ryan McDaniel is in the American Arena League with the Atlanta Havoc. So that's a big target loss for them. They got SK back, Money's back, Darius Reynolds, but Ryan McDaniel is another piece that they're going to be missing. And not only that, but Dan Rodabaugh has missed out on the MVP award the last 2 seasons, to Nick Davila and last year to Rennie Hippard. So I hate it to say it, but I really honestly think that Philadelphia is the odd team out here.
But that's not for a lack of trying. And yes, the McDaniels loss is significant. But think back. I said that about last year, and I'm going to say it again, and I featured in my piece this year as far as why I think Washington's going to win it all. I'm sticking by that. This is going to be another one of those, surprisingly, with all the quarterback talent, because of the parity, an even little bit lower scoring season. Only, I believe, 3 times that both teams last year in a game scored more than 60 points. 17 times throughout the entire season, including playoffs and Arena Bowl. Twice, a team went over 70. Philadelphia owned a large chunk of those higher scoring games. Yes, play was very sloppy. However, if anything Clint Dalzell showed, if the team, like the Soul, gets punched early in the game, which they did a few times, they can get back off the canvas, punch back, and start to punch harder. I know there's going to be some tweaks involved, but if anybody, Dalzell's the kind of guy who's going to make those tweaks. Now, granted, if they get off to slower starts again this season, that's going to hurt them more so than it would last year. Do I have them in the Arena Bowl? I will say right now, no, I don't. But I'm not counting them out entirely.
That's a good explanation. They did score a lot of points last year. Again, they have the top receivers in the league, SK, Money, Reynolds. But again, it's all going to depend on Rodabaugh. And I say this for every sport, every football sport. Your team's success depends on your coach. If your coach is good, you're going to be good. But then it depends on your quarterback. If your quarterback is bad, the team is going down. That's as simple as that. See that, and I think, and again, going out on a limb here, Rodabaugh might be the 4th best quarterback in this league starting 2018. A lot of people are going to be able to give me. I'm going to get so much heat for that, but I mean, if you go back and watch last year, you saw it from here and there. You're just like, I don't know. So we have Erik has the Baltimore Brigade odd team out. Tim Capper of ArenaFan has the Washington Valor out. And I have the Philadelphia Soul, the odd team out. We just need one more guy to say the Albany Empire are out. Speaking of Albany, Eric, we're going to flip the script here. And as nuts as this is, especially with what Tim just said, Albany is my favorite to win it all. They have so many weapons on both sides of the ball. And now they have Tommy Grady. It's going to be very hard for them to go get past the teams that are already in this league. But I have a really good feeling that they can do it. Who is your favorite team right now?
Barely Washington. They're keeping a lot of their core players. They've been through a tough year. Going 3-11 bonds a team more than anything. And the biggest thing is they kept a lot of their key players, but they also, and normally I'd say this would hurt, but this would help, they got younger. They're relying on a lot of guys with only just a couple of years experience. In a league like this means they don't know any better. And when you've got a lot of guys that don't know any better, but can learn, and they're seeing the team through the eyes of just last season, they are going to go all out to try to get some sort of semblance of revenge. And so that way they can be the guys that said, hey, we helped build this team back up. We brought them to glory. And with a signal caller like Davila, who, by the way, was lured away from a coaching job with Arizona to come back behind center, that is so invaluable on top of being one of the best quarterbacks in a generation in this league.
Invaluable. I see what you did there. It would absolutely be amazing to see Washington win the Arena Bowl, especially after winning, 3 games last season? Maybe 2?
Mm-hmm.
3-11. 3-11. Just imagine, 3-11 the Arena Bowl. That would be something. And we'll talk a little bit about Washington, actually, right now. As we get to our team previews, Eric, it's time to talk about team previews here on This Week in the AFL. And we start with Washington. I love Washington. I love what the Valor have right now. 2, not just 1, but 2 former MVP quarterbacks. Warren Smith Jr. lit it up in the National Arena League last year with the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks. And, come on. Nick Davilla's Nick Davilla. The only thing that worries me about this team is defense. Last year, they had Jimmy Gordon had moved from linebacker to the defensive line. That's going to be big for them.
Mm-hmm.
But in the secondary, the guy I looked at most in the defense for Valor, Tracy Belton. I don't even know if he's with the team anymore. That's my big concern is the secondary and I guess the defensive backs now because Jimmy Gordon's no longer a defensive back. He's on the line.
Well, having Gordon up to the line really helps because if you looked at that front 5 as a unit, they were decent at getting pressure. But who was right involved, making a tackle, doing what he could in coverage? It was the commissioner, Gordon. Now, you're saying, okay, we know you can make an impact with physicality. We're going to bring you up front to try to rush the quarterbacks. Because this season, more than ever, making any of these quarterbacks uncomfortable is going to be the key. Even if you're hurrying passes, that gives the secondary a little less pressure, saying we know we're not going to win one-on-one battles every time. We know we're going to get beat, and we got to be careful about getting beat deep a lot of these times. But if we just get 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second advantage by having the ball have to come out of the other guy's hand that much quicker, we can work and say, okay, we can make this break at the line of scrimmage. We can cut in, break off this route 5-10 yards deep. We can make plays when we have to. We can get better field position if we need it. So it's not going to be the worst thing in the world for Washington.
Might not be, but I'm still a little concerned there. We'll see what happens. But on offense, I'm a big offensive guy. Nick Davila, Warren Smith Jr., no matter who starts, which is going to be Davila, let's be real. They have 2 star receivers, maybe more. I'm not sure. I've been paying much attention. They have Rod Windsor, like I mentioned before, and they've also signed former Baltimore Brigade receiver, big play Reggie Gray. Very excited to see what he'll do this season. Speaking of Baltimore, by the way, really good roster. And I look at the one thing I look at with this team, the quarterback wide receiver duo of Randy Hippard and a sleeper, I feel, because he didn't play much last season with injury, and he went to the CFL for a little bit. Quentin Sims. That's going to be one of my favorite quarterback receiver duos in the league this year.
Now, the biggest question with Quentin Sims coming over from Cleveland, he really wasn't always the number one guy.
No, of course not.
And I'm going to say this with a big, well, not a big, but it's a slight if, because it could be more of a certainty. If Hippard makes him the number one guy in B-more, can he handle closer to being more double teams? Can he handle more and more targets per night? And can he step up and deliver? If he can, okay, they're going to be a lot closer to the rest of the league than I realized. But if he can't, what's Hippard gonna do? And on another side note, talk about the wide receiver, talk about the quarterback. Hippard, when he's healthy, when he's on form, he'll complete over 70% of his passes. Can he get the protection he needs to stay upright, stay healthy? Carden's gone. Not sure who the backup is, but nowhere near enough of a safety net, in my opinion. 2 big things to really look out for.
You asked the question, should Quentin Sims not be able to handle being double teamed? What will Hippard do? And I have the answer right here for you. Kendrick Ings is on the other side of Quentin Sims, another star receiver who played with Hippard last year in Tampa. So that's another 1-2 punch we'll be looking at. But I feel like, and people are going to think I'm nuts for saying this, I do think that Quentin Sims will be the top receiver for Hippard, because Ings is more special teams than he is in the receiving game, but of course he'll be a factor in both.
I would still, if we were talking, say, 35 passes a night, I wouldn't be surprised if you have a lot of nights to where Sims gets 12, 13 targets, Ings winds up with 10. Because, yes, he's electrical on special teams, but you just need that just as much of his speed at receiver to counteract with Quentin Sims' power. Just like you saw Tampa Bay work him into their offensive scheme. So, they're going to be 1-1A if that's the case.
It's going to be very interesting to see, as with all teams, see how Baltimore does with that trio of Ings, Sims, and Hippard. Can't wait to watch them. They actually opened, if I'm not mistaken, they opened their season against the Washington Valor at the Royal Farms Arena April this weekend. I don't remember when it was. I know the first game is the 13th, the Soul and the Empire.
So that would be the 14th? It would be that Saturday?
Yeah, okay. That's it. This Saturday, the April 14th. Third team, Albany. Before today, I don't know how much you paid attention to the Albany Empire roster. I sort of did. They had one quarterback who stood out. I don't remember his name. I do know 2 things. He backed up Josh Rosen at UCLA, and he has the record for most passing yards in a college football game. So I was thinking, wow, there's their guy right there. I didn't know anything about him, but I knew that. I was like, wow, there's that guy. And bam, Tommy Grady's in the picture. So now you put Grady in there, and that team just gets a lot more exciting now that they have a quarterback.
Yeah, the quarterback, he's really going to drive this team. He has experience. He can really get the ball down the field. It's just, don't be surprised if Albany does get off to a slow start. Don't be surprised if not just 0-1, maybe 0-3, because Grady's got to get comfortable. He's got to have tremendous communication with his receivers. I've seen this firsthand in his time in Jacksonville. When he has communication with those receivers, he can be insane. Once he gets into a rhythm, he can be insane. The coaches just have to work with him when things don't go right. He can crumble. The team can crumble. Things can snowball. I've seen that happen just as often as success. But if they can limit the damage the first quarter of the season and win one, they can propel themselves probably.
That's
game 7 and 5 ish.
That's bold. An 0-3 start for an Albany Empire team that's just like L teams loaded.
It could potentially happen.
I gotta remember that. Fully loaded Albany Empire start 0-3. Bold take by Erik Watkins. Another bold take on this season 3 premiere of This Week in the AFL we've heard so far. A lot of good stuff here. And the final team, of course, they did 2-time defending champion Philadelphia Soul. I said they're my odd team out, but that doesn't mean they don't have talent. They have, like I said, Money Reynolds is back. SK, Routabaugh, Jeremy Richards is back in the backfield. And former Lehigh Valley Steelhawks wide receiver Darius Prince, who won Arena Bowl 30 MVP, actually, will be returning to the Soul. He told me in an interview very soon after the Arena Bowl, this is where I want to be. So that's going to be another big factor. He only played 2 games, I believe, maybe 1 game for the Soul last year. Now he's there to stay. I can't wait to see what he'll do.
And lest we forget a defense still with the likes of a Joe Gooseby.
Oh, yes.
Again, last year, 60 was the magic number. I'm taking that into this season. A lot of these games are going to be first to 60 wins.
Wow.
These teams, even with the quarterbacks, you have all of this experience, but you have defenses that also know how to plan against it. So everybody's just going to have to step up, step up, step up. So you figure 60 points winning a game in what? 75, maybe 80 touchdown passes at the most leading the league? You're going to have talent. They're going to have offense, but these are going to be really 24 chess matches just in the regular season.
And not to mention Poppy Livers, I believe he's a defensive lineman for the Soul. I believe he missed all of last season. I think he'll be coming back. He'll be healthy. That, like you said, defense is going to be really good. And with Prince, the addition of Prince along with Money Reynolds, along with SK, but possibly the return of Ryan McDaniel, who knows? He's been with Atlanta the last couple games. I would like to see Routabaugh get over that hump. Finally win his second MVP award after missing out the last 2 years.
Don't be surprised if it winds up being amongst 4 or 5 different candidates this year. I don't see anybody really pulling away, so pay closer attention to the last 3 games of the season and how these teams finish. That's going to determine your MVP.
It could come down to any of the 4 quarterbacks, any wide receiver. It could literally come down to anybody. There's so much talent in this league. We talked about it all show. How much talent there is in this league, quality or quantity, all this other stuff. But one thing I have not noticed is, and he's about to join us momentarily, wide receiver Collin Taylor has not been signed by anybody. And here he is with us, Mr. former Cleveland Gladiators wide receiver Collin Taylor. How are you doing tonight?
Fellas, thanks for having me on. Former Gladiators receiver.
That's right.
That sounds bizarre, doesn't it?
It does. It's sad too. It's sad.
Man, you're telling me.
Let's talk about this. Where were you when you got the news that the Gladiators were quote unquote ceasing operations for the next 2 seasons?
Yeah, so I unfortunately I was at work at the time. I've had an awesome opportunity these last about 6 months or so to work at a performance gym up here in Avon, Ohio, and I was just out on the floor at work, and I got a text, and I usually don't have my phone on me, so it was funny that I did. I got a text actually from a close friend and a fan of mine who said, "Terrible to hear about the Gladiators," and I texted back. I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about," which was wild because I was just talking about it probably an hour before to one of our athletes, and then he sent me the link to the press release, and I read it right there on the floor, and then kind of had to get back into working, so didn't really think about it. It didn't really hit me till that night. When I called my parents after they'd heard about it, in the next 48 hours, it was, phone call after text after email about people who heard about it. So, I mean, a huge bummer. The biggest thing to me is we have such an incredible fan base here in Cleveland that I feel terrible for everybody who's, supported us and loved us for so long. I don't feel like it was the best way to go about it, kind of springing it on everybody, but also but it was just a bummer how it all went down. It really was.
Now, kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, if all the vibes from especially a very, you could almost say, rabid fan base in Cleveland, all throughout that area, would you say that the front office would be looking for the team to come back in these 2 years, or any signs saying it's like, hey, come on, let's let this just be a break rather than it be kind of a worst case scenario?
Sure. I'll tell you what's wild is I had heard about the construction of the Quicken Loans Arena probably 4 years ago when I first got to Cleveland. And I remember thinking how cool it would be to, I even saw a model, almost like one of those, in a movie, you see they make a Lego model of whatever it is they're looking at. And I remember thinking, like, oh, that'll be super cool to play there and all that. And I hadn't heard anything since then, so it was really out of the blue. So a lot of us players figured they had to have time to look and try to find places for the team to play. So, I haven't had an open conversation with anybody in the front office since then. And I've trusted them for 4 years, so it's not like I would go behind their back and say anything negative about them. So I'm sure they were put in a tough situation. I feel like for them to make a move like this, they must have been somewhat handcuffed, and this was the only option. But I do know, we had some fans reach out to some other facilities. We have a lot of facilities that could support us around here. There's a facility in Cleveland State. There's one in Canton. There's one in Akron. There's one in Columbus, that I was hearing about more and more after the fact. So I imagine it was just one of those situations where they were put in a tough situation and had to make the move. So that was a bummer. But even after that, I think as long as we can put on a good show in the Arena Football League, like I believe, myself and the rest of the players think that we can do moving forward, I think Cleveland would be stoked to have their team back in 2 years. It's going to be tough, I think, to generate the following that we've had since they came back. In the I believe it was 2010 when they moved to Cleveland. So it's going to be hard to kind of generate that fan base again. But I think if they're able to do that, you're going to see an Arena Football League team here in Cleveland in the next couple of years. So fingers are crossed. But I'm just being optimistic. I moved my life to Cleveland for that, right? And then unfortunately that happened. But things happen. I get it, and prepared and moving on as well as I can from the situation.
Now I've paid attention to these transactions.
Yeah,
and I have yet to see your name. Does that if a team called you said we want you to play for us, would you travel to the East Coast and play for that team?
So I'm in a tough spot right now. I've spent the last 7 years of playing trying to put myself in a situation that would, give me an exciting career path as soon as football was over. And I am in exactly that. I'm training athletes. I'm actually a strength and conditioning coach at a Division III college out here in Ohio right now. So I have a lot of really excellent things going on as far as my career goes. But also seeing just pictures and videos from my buddies at practice and in training camps, gets me going. I mean, it's just one of those things where I'm not sure that ever finishes. I'm not sure you ever go without that. So it's something I'm looking into, is playing this season. And, I've narrowed it down to 4 teams. So, so that's a little different than years past. But if it's going to happen, it's going to happen soon. So, there'll be something coming out pretty soon. I imagine that you guys will see. But it's definitely something. I mean, the Arena Football League has a very special place in my heart. It's given me a lot of opportunities. And now that us as players have kind of worked ourselves to a better CBA and in a better place where the league is willing to support us all year round and give us opportunities for health care and pay us more like professionals and house us more like professionals. It's something that I would almost be remiss not to play in, because I remember 8 years ago playing for $150 in the IFL. And I feel like, I almost deserve to play in a league with higher pay. So it's definitely something I'm looking into.
Now, you kind of saved yourself, because I was going to put you on the spot a little bit, but you brought up an excellent point. On top of the news with the Gladiators, you, I'm sure, just like all the players, either sat back, participated in, got connected in somehow with the CBA negotiations. Mm-hmm. Seeing everything from, looks like my perspective on watching everything on Twitter, Steven's perspective, how he was following along with it. As a player, how did you feel as everything was going on, knowing that the season was on the line?
I'll tell you, there was about a 24-hour period where we went from thinking that the Arena Football League would never be around, that would never play again, right, to landing a CBA. We're on a conference call. Everybody agrees with a unanimous decision that we support the CBA. I mean, it was wild how quickly everything happened. And obviously we've all got, and just for my team, I know we've got a group chat that we all text about and all the updates. And our player rep was Quentin Sims. So I don't know if you guys have ever gotten a chance to talk to Quentin, but he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. I mean, the guy's incredible. He'll go to law school here in a couple of years when he's done having an incredible football career. But he's not only an incredible player, he's an incredible guy. And he was very involved in the negotiation. And we, as Cleveland, were super lucky to have him on our side. So he would keep us updated on all the, on all the stuff moving forward on the CBA. And it was just really nice to, once it went from literally like not thinking we were going to play to 12 hours later, having an awesome CBA. I mean, it was a wild ride, but I'm glad we held out. I'm glad everybody stayed together and we're able to get something that we wanted.
Yeah. There's 4 teams. I said this earlier, quality over quantity. There's 4 teams, but every team is stacked with talent. And a lot of people don't feel that saying. I don't understand why, but that's something else. Collin Taylor, former Cleveland Gladiators wide receiver, probably future on another team wide receiver. We'll love to see him back in the league this year.
Yeah, thank you.
With all this talent, we had Tim Capper of ArenaFan on earlier. He couldn't figure it. He couldn't figure it out. I'm going to ask you: do you have a matchup you like to see in Arena Bowl 30, and a team you would like to see win it all this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, Philadelphia is king right now. I think it would be dumb for anybody to say that they're not, they shouldn't be number 1 going into the season.
Steven?
I mean, and maybe I'll have to listen back and hear what you say. But these guys, they've had these guys together for so long. I got an opportunity to play for Clint, which was one of the, Coach Dalzell, which was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I mean, the guy just knows the game. He knows what to do. Every week Philly goes into a game, they have an advantage just because of him. And everybody knows that, and he's the type of guy who, if you played against one of his teams in 2011, you're going to get the same game plan that he takes going into 2018. But the players are so sold, they're so into it that they know, we're going to play we're gonna play the game plan. We're gonna go by the game plan, and at the end of the game, we're gonna have an opportunity to win it. And I mean, they're so confident with that, and they're so good at it. Watching Philadelphia, they don't make a ton of mistakes, and that's a big thing you see. And that's the problem we had in the past. The games we lost when I was playing for the Gladiators were games that we just made a few too many mistakes. And even if it was 2 or 3 turnovers, that's 2 or 3 turnovers too much to be playing a Philadelphia team. So I think Philly's number one. I think, again, any opportunity that they have with the team they have and Coach Dozell, I think you'll more than likely see them in the championship. And then just kind of as things are unfolding, I think right now Albany probably has the next best roster because they're just packed with veterans. Their defense looks awesome. Starting to develop a pretty impressive offense. A couple of my close friends are out there, and I mean, I think they're going to be like a really, really tough team. And Coach Keefe has always been tough to play against. When he was with those Orlando teams that we played against in Cleveland, he was always a heck of a coach to play against. So I think you're going to see some pretty excellent battles between those two teams. But also with that being said, I mean, you can't sleep on Nick Davila, right? In Washington. I mean, one of the greatest players ever play the game. And now he's got Rod Windsor back. So it really doesn't matter who else is out there with them. They're going to be competitive. And then, you see Randy link up with Ings and Q out there and, some of these other guys. It's going to be a really competitive league this year.
All right. So now I am going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
As you said earlier, you narrowed it down to 4 teams. If anybody happens to pick up the phone, hit you up, you would give them a shot. But especially after everything you just mentioned, is there one team, one roster where you're looking at and saying, if blank, you have my number, ... Fill in that blank.
Yeah, so let me think about how I want to approach this. I think every team has a good opportunity to compete for a championship. And I also the only thing that I think I haven't done in my career as an arena football player is won a championship. Okay. So that would be the thing. If contacted, I would go to the team that I think has the best opportunity to win the championship. Is that vague enough for you guys?
Yeah.
Well played.
I gotcha.
Well played.
Yeah. So it's just one of those situations that, every team is packed, and I want to play a role, whatever that role is on the best team in the league. So, going to play, I'm going to try to find a position where I know I can help the team out, where, I believe in what the coaching staff is doing, and that I also, have some veterans on the team who I can trust and I've played with before. And I think that's what's going to end up, being ultimately what my decision is going to be. Because in the past, I've tried to get close to home, which is Indianapolis, and nothing's super close to home. So that's kind of out the window now. Demographics aren't really a big deal. I've never been to Baltimore. I've never been to DC. I've never spent any time in New York. So I think all those would be pretty cool places to play.
I don't know if you follow any other leagues, like the American Arena League. There's a team in my area, the Richmond Rough Riders.
Yeah.
Just today, Jay Luster, very trusted man in the arena football media, he broke the news that the Rough Riders signed one of your former, I guess he would still be a friend, but former teammates.
Yeah.
Arvell Nelson is signed with the Richmond Rough Riders. I cannot wait to see him in action this Saturday.
That's awesome. I actually was just I was just talking to Arvell. It's funny because we both work in similar fields up here in Cleveland. And a lot of their football guys come up to our football camps. We send a lot of our guys to his football camps. And so we have a lot of connections out here in Cleveland. And I actually just heard right before we got on the phone, I got a text that Arvell signed. So I'm excited for him, man. He's a heck of an athlete. He could throw the ball through a brick wall. So he's going to be he's super exciting to watch play, and I might have to actually tune in if I'm able to get that game. I might have to tune in to see him do his thing, and I wish nothing but the best for Arvell.
Of course, Collin Taylor, former Cleveland Gladiators wide receiver, also a Beijing Lions wide receiver.
Yeah.
You have that going on next year. You are awesome. You're always awesome when we have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us. Taking time out of your schedule tonight, joining us here on the Season 3 premiere of This Week in the AFL. Thank you, Collin.
Thanks for having me, guys. Anything you need, you guys know my number, right?
Yes, sir. So that is right. We do.
Absolutely. Hey, I bet against this guy, folks, way too many times, and it's already come back. So you'll be seeing Collin around.
Absolutely.
Take that back.
You got it. Thanks, guys. Great talking to y'all.
Thank Collin. That was awesome. Him saying Quentin Sims was going to law school in a couple of years. That makes me want to have Quentin Sims on. So we'll have to work on that as well in the next couple of weeks as we go on here on This Week in the AFL. That'd be very interesting. Well, Erik, the time has come. We are at the end of the show. It is time for both of us to give a Rainbow 31 predictions. I'll let you go first.
Now, I said Baltimore is kind of my odd team out. And I already said Philadelphia, as stacked as they are, as much of a cohesive, long-time unit they've been together, they're not going to make it to the Arena Bowl. The way that I see it, I have a Beltway SmackDown playoff as one of those 2-game series. And in that case, I go with Nick Davila. I always do come the postseason. As good as Randy is, he's another one of those guys that unfortunately can't really get over the hump. In my other matchup, I've got Philadelphia and Albany. Now listen, Dan Rodabaugh, Tommy Grady, they've met in the playoffs before. Grady knows, after grinding and grinding, how to get the upper hand, especially if he gets to see him twice. I think this is the case that, just like when he made it to the Arena Bowl with the Sharks, he does it again. However, also like when he made it to the Arena Bowl with the Sharks, I have him coming up a teeny bit short. Washington, at home, beats the Empire.
All right. Oddly enough, I have this. I know I said Albany was my favorite, but Tim sort of got me. Tim Capper got me today. Tommy Grady has been out of the league a year. He broke his foot in the NAL last year. He missed most of the season. So, Erik, I'm with you here. The Washington Valor will defeat the Albany Empire at it's another Capital One Arena, I believe, in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
To capture Arena Bowl 31 and complete what I believe will be the biggest turnaround in Arena Football League history. And we'll be a part of it. It's going to be a blessing if it happens. This is very early. A lot of things can change. But if it happens, it'll be a great turnaround. So
everything is up in the air. Now, will it be like the Tampa Bay turnaround, going from 2-14 to an Arena Bowl berth? Not quite, but 3-11 to say 8-4 and winning the Arena Bowl, I'll take it.
And I'll be in Washington D.C. on July 28th to watch that. But we have a long way to go. I'm very excited for the season. I'm very excited for this show. We keep going here.
Good to be back in the saddle. Good to have a saddle to be back in.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So that is going to do it for the Season 3 premiere of This Week in AFL. Erik, a pleasure as always. Can't wait to doing this show for the rest of the way.
'Tis only the beginning.
Oh, yes. I'm Stephen Err. We thank you for listening to the Season 3 premiere of This Week in the AFL. Enjoy opening weekend, and you already know we'll be back next week, everybody.
Peace.